us as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty brains, treasures of faith, never enough. around these walls. I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me. I know the night won't last. Your will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still in love. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness.
I just thank you for time and time again, just showing us how good your love really is, and showing us all the different layers of your love and all the different reasons we can trust you. And I just pray that we remember that. We're taking what Tim's about to say, and we remember what you've done for us, remember what we learned about you, and we take that and we live that out. Amen.
Awesome. Wow. First, just let me say how appreciative I am of the worship team. I mean, they come every week, prepare, put in a lot of time and effort, and I mean, thank you guys. That was amazing. Really, really. And y'all do that every week, and it is greatly appreciated. Very, very cool. We're going to start a new series tonight that we're going to talk about for the next couple of weeks, and I'm calling it Leave Your Faith at the Door. So you can read that title and think about that for a moment and maybe be like, wait, what? Isn't that supposed to be what we're supposed to have? As in like leave, go, right? Leave your faith at the door. And what I mean by that is this, is that when I was a teenager, when I was your guys' age, I was in my youth group, we were on a trip. I think we were going to camp, and I was sitting in the front seat of the van, and we had, the two captain chairs or whatever, were two adults sitting up there. And so I've always liked to discuss things and debate things and stuff like that. And so we were having one of those discussions about the Bible and God and stuff like that. And I don't remember what the specific question was that I asked. But I asked something, and I just remembered very distinctly the leader that was sitting in the passenger seat just kind of turned and looked at me and goes, man, you're thinking too hard. You just got to accept it by faith. That's what they said. And so I was like, oh, okay, my bad. But the more I've thought about that and everything, I'm like, well, is that really a good kind of understanding or explanation of faith? That it's this, you turn off your brain, don't overthink stuff, because it's too complicated, and you just accept what it is, right? And so I don't think that's really a great understanding of faith. I don't think faith is this non-thinking, you close your eyes, you ignore logic and reason, you stick your fingers in your ears like a little kid and be like, no, I can't hear you. I don't think that's what real, good, true biblical faith is about. So I don't think faith is that. I want to say this, if that's kind of your understanding of what faith is you just close your eyes, cross your fingers, and I just hope I'm believing the right thing, and jump, right? If that's kind of your concept of faith, then that's what I want to say to leave at the door. That kind of blind faith, let's leave that at the door, because I don't think that's a good, accurate picture of what faith is. I think faith is so much more than that kind of blind type of faith. And so over these next couple of weeks, I want to say just the opposite. I want you to turn on your brain. I want you to think deeply. I want you to be critical and really think about and analyze what we call a Christian worldview. And use your logic, use your reason, open up your eyes, bring your fingers out of your ears, right? And think about, is this a reasonable, rational conclusion to actually believe there is a God and that we should believe in him, right? And so whether you've ever had questions is God real, or How do we know the Bible's true? If you've ever been asked those or had those questions yourself, right? I'm going to say, awesome. Those are great questions to have, to think about, to ponder, and use your brain to kind of explore that. And so over these next couple of weeks, that's what we're going to do, is use our brain to kind of look at and explore this concept of the Christian faith and a Christian worldview. And I personally believe it's what Jesus wants us to do, right? Because when Jesus was once asked, hey, out of all of the things we're supposed to do that's supposed to be good and honorable and right, what's like the most important? Jesus, could you sum it up for us? What is the most important thing we can do? And you know what Jesus' response was? We often call it the Great Commandment. It's found, well, the way that Luke records it, he finds it in Luke 10:37. He says this, Jesus answers, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind. Jesus actually says to love him with your mind. That's a part of loving God, is using your mind. So not turning it off, but actually turning it on. Engaging your mind is an aspect of loving him. One of Jesus's top followers, one of his disciples, Peter, right? We know Peter, the guy who walked on the water, crazy, chopped off a dude's ear and all that fun stuff. When he writes a letter to other believers who follow Jesus to give them encouragement and instruction, this is what he says in his letter, 1 Peter, letter, put it all together, it's letter. 1 Peter 3:15, he says this, but in your heart set apart Christ as Lord, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give a reason for the hope that you have. So what Peter says is like, hey, if someone ever asks you, hey, why do you believe that? Can you give an answer to that? Can you respond to that? He says, man, if Jesus is important to you, then you should be prepared to have an answer for people when they ask you, like, why do you believe the Bible's true? So if someone were to ask you, like, maybe a difficult question along the lines of, well, like, there's no scientific proof to the existence of God. So, like, why would you believe that if there's no science that backs it up? Could you have a response to that? Or if somebody said, hey, I know you believe in Christianity, right? And Christianity is all about getting to God. But basically, isn't every religion doing that, trying to get to God? So what if all religions have some truth to them? And like God's on top of the mountain, and every religion is like just making their way up the mountain. They're just coming at it on different paths at different sides. Like, isn't that possible? So maybe all religions are true and we're all just getting to God. So it really doesn't matter what religion you follow, because I mean, like, we're all getting to the same God anyway. Could you respond to that? Is that true? Do you think it is? Do you think it's not? And do you have a reason why you might think it is or isn't? Okay? What if somebody said, hey, you know, the Bible, it's really just a book of fairy tales. I mean, really, it teaches some good morals and stuff and some good lessons, but it's really just a bunch of fairy tales. It's no different than Cinderella. Cinderella like wished upon a star and a fairy godmother came and gave her what she wanted. That's what Christians do, right? You like pray, wish upon a star, and your fairy godmother Jesus shows up and gives you what you want. Like, what's the difference? It's the same thing. Could you respond to that? And so whether you could or can't, what I want to do over these next couple of weeks is to kind of explore some of that stuff with you for the purpose that we can do what Peter asked us to do, that we could be better prepared to give people an answer for the reason why we believe what we believe. And this specific kind of like field of study that we're going to be talking about over these next couple of weeks is called apologetics. Not that that's hugely important to y'all, but it's a field within the study of faith and religion that we talk about, okay? So think about it like in science. There's different kind of specific studies, right? There's biology, astronomy, chemistry, right? And those are specific things. That's kind of what apologetics is within the big framework of theology. It's specifically the study of the reasons why you believe what you believe, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about over these next couple of weeks, of the reason why we believe what we believe. And that word comes from, you see it there on your screen, from the Greek word apologia. And that word means a reason or defense. And so basically apologetics is the reason or the defense for the Christian faith. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, hey, Joel, go back one slide. That verse right here, the Greek word there, but in your heart set apart Christ as Lord, always be prepared to give an answer. That word answer is the Greek word apologia. So a good translation could be always be prepared to give a defense for what you believe, to give a reason why. That's the word right there. And so that's where we get this term apologetics. It comes from that Greek word apologia. That's all for free. That's not really even that big of a deal, but for anyway, there you go. So I want to begin with this idea. Well, I said what faith is not. Faith is not like closing your eyes and crossing your fingers and saying like, I hope, I wish. That's not what good faith is. Let's start with what is a good, solid understanding of what faith is. And this is what I have for you. Real, true, authentic faith is this: having confidence that God is who he says he is, and he'll do everything that he's promised to do. You've probably heard that from me before. It's one of my big 7. But that is our starting point of what is real, true, authentic biblical faith. It's having confidence that God is who he says he is, and he will do everything that he's promised to do. And so my goal over these next couple of weeks is to help increase your confidence in the Christian worldview. Because when your confidence increases, I believe it's more of a stronger conviction in your life to live it out and to be able to talk about it with others. When you are asked questions, the stronger your confidence is. For example, my kids went to a school called Holy Cross, and while they were there, they had to do a science fair, right? And so science fairs, I don't know if y'all have ever had to do them, but like not the most favorite thing for students to do, right? And I was asked on several occasions to go and judge the science fair. And so like all the science fair projects would be set up in the gym, right? And I would go around to all the tables and I would have like this thing, and I would start asking the students questions about their project. And so they would have to explain it to me, right? And they'd say, oh, this is what I did, and this is how I did it. And I'd ask them, well, why did you do this and not that? Or why did you come to this conclusion? Why was this your hypothesis? So I'd ask them stuff and they'd have to give me answers. Well, it became pretty clear after doing this several times with different students that some students knew the answers. Like, didn't matter what you asked them, they could give you the answer, like, oh yeah, I did this because of this reason. Well, actually, I tried 2 other ways and it didn't work, so that's why I did it this way. I'm like, okay, cool. They could explain everything, right? Some students, like, couldn't answer your questions at all. They'd be like, I don't know, because it looked cool, I don't have a real reason, right? And so it became pretty clear after a little while, the students who did the project themselves knew it. The students whose parents did the project for them didn't. And it became very clear in their confidence in being able to talk about and explain what it was they did and why their project was the way it was, right? And so their ability to communicate, talk about it well, was based on their confidence level of their knowledge and experience of the material. And so that's kind of what my goal is over these next couple of weeks, is to increase your knowledge and experience level with this kind of stuff that a lot of times, to be honest, Christians kind of walk away from. They're like, ooh, that's hard questions. That's difficult. Let's just not talk about that kind of stuff, right? And so I want us to have some confidence when it comes to that. And especially for you older students getting prepared for college, I mean, you are going to face different worldviews in the Christian worldview. You're going to meet some college professors that are incredibly intelligent, really smart, some that you even respect. You're like, dude, I am here to learn from you. And yet they're going to challenge some of your core beliefs of a Christian worldview. And so what do you do with that, right? How do you respond to that? And so again, that's my goal over these next couple of weeks, is to increase our confidence in what it is. So I've said a couple of times now, this worldview. Worldview is basically the framework and the system in which we evaluate the world. How we view the world around us is your framework, is your worldview. And every single one of you has a worldview. Every person has a worldview, a way and a manner in which they look at the world. Whether you realize it or not, everyone does, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about different worldviews, but check out this video. I found this. I thought it was a real cute way to kind of introduce the concept of worldview.
This is Sasha. This is Sam. When they first met, it was just small talk about where to find the best coffee, the new high top she just bought, outlook appointments. poetry he found in a used bookstore, a new local band she discovered just last weekend, a zombie apocalypse movie he saw last night with some friends in his martial arts class, her homemade screen print t-shirt, and his favorite Chinese restaurant, which made them both hungry. So they got 2 orders of Mandarin chicken with brown rice, and then Sam opened his fortune cookie. Life's journey ends with a new beginning.
Whoa, that's deep. But in the real world, life's journey ends with an ending. When you die, you're done.
Well, yes, your body no longer works, but your soul continues to exist, don't you think?
Your soul? No, I don't believe in ghosts. We're physical creatures, material objects, just a collection of highly organized atoms. When your brain flatlines, that's it, game over.
So you don't believe in life after death?
No. I mean, it's a comforting thought, but there's just no scientific evidence for it. I'd rather face the real world than believe in a fairy tale.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. It's best to face reality, but it may be that life after death is reality. I mean, think about it. If life just ends at death, then everything we do or say comes to nothing. What meaning or purpose can our lives possibly have?
Well, I guess my life has whatever meaning I choose to give it. I personally believe in truth, beauty, science, making the world a better place, saving the environment, freedom of speech, and, tolerance.
Yes, that's all well and good. But what does all that matter if it ends in nothingness? What are your thoughts about God?
Which God? There are millions of gods.
The God that's in the Bible.
It's been proven that the Bible is just a bunch of mythology written by ancient desert nomads. But if faith in God makes you feel good, I won't argue with that. But I personally prefer more of a rational, open-minded approach to life. Here's what I believe, Sasha. You shouldn't think anything is true unless it's been scientifically proven.
But has that belief itself been scientifically proven? Sam, you and I look at life very differently.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we're from different worlds.
Not different worlds, different worldviews. A worldview is the set of lenses through which you see the world around you. It's a web of habit-forming beliefs that helps you make sense of all your experiences. Through your worldview, you interpret life in a particular way. It affects how you think, how you feel, and how you live from day to day. To understand what your worldview is, think carefully about the big questions of life. Does God exist? How did everything begin? Who am I? Why am I here? Am I living a good life? What happens after I die? Cabbages and puppies don't think about this stuff, but reflecting on these questions is part of what makes us human. In fact, every one of us has a worldview. What's yours?
All right. So there you go. Idea of a worldview. All worldviews deal with these 5 major kind of concepts or ideas. 1, the origin. What is the origin of the universe? Where do we all come from? 2, has to do with identity. Who are we? What does it mean to be human? Meaning, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of us being here? 4, morality. How should we live? What is right or wrong? And who determines what's right or wrong? And number 5, destiny. Where are we going? All worldviews deal with those major things, right? That's what a worldview is. And once you kind of wrap your mind around what you think about those things, that has a huge impact on how you make decisions on a normal day-to-day life about everything else. Is really around that framework of how you deal with those things right there, okay? So worldviews deal with that. Really, for the most part, there are 3 major worldviews that I would say pretty much all other worldviews kind of fall into or under, okay? So the first one you'll see up there is theism. It's the concept or idea that we have an existing universe, all time, space, and everything is contained within the universe, and there is a God that created it, a supernatural, powerful being that created all of reality. Okay, so that's a theistic worldview. That would include stuff like Judaism, Christianity. Islam is a theistic worldview. They believe that there is a God who created everything. Okay, and then there's a pantheistic worldview, pantheism, which is the idea that God is everything and everything is God. God is nature and nature is God. So it's not so much he created it, but he is it. And so there's not this separation, okay? So kind of ideas or thoughts that follow into that pattern would be Buddhism, Hinduism, more of kind of like New Age type of thought that say that. You may hear it in terms of like there's a universal consciousness that we all have to connect to, or a life force that's within us all. And if we can just bring that out, then we can be our best selves. You'll hear terms like that. That's more kind of like a New Age, but that falls under like a pantheism worldview. And then the last one is an atheistic point view, atheism, where there is no God at all. The only thing that exists is the universe. Everything that exists is within the universe, and there is no outside power, supernatural force of any kind. It's all contained. So humanism, naturalism, Darwinism, that all falls within that atheistic worldview. So I would say those are the three major worldviews, and all kind of religions and patterns of thought pretty much fall under those three. Okay, does that make sense? I would say, to maybe help you kind of see these differences a little bit more, is think of the world or the universe as a painting. So in the first one, it says there is a painting and there is a painter who painted this beautiful painting. The second one, pantheism, says the painter and the painting are the same thing. They're one and the same. There is no separate. And the third one is the idea that there's just a painting and there is no painter. Just this painting just exists as it is. Okay? And so those are kind of like different ideas or thoughts behind the different kind of concepts of worldview. I personally believe, that theism is a completely rational, logical, reasonable conclusion. When you look at those 5 questions of when you come to answers, to me, I think theism is a rational, reasonable conclusion to come to. That you don't have to be crazy or close your eyes or stick your fingers in your ears and go, I'm not going to listen to science. I'm not going to listen to anybody who has a brain, and just believe it. No, I think you can logically, systematically, critically evaluate the evidence that we have and come to the conclusion that there is a God who created everything. And so we're going to talk about that. And I keep using these terms, reasonable and rational, and we'll jump into that in just a minute more. But I have an example here of some different quotes and thoughts from some movies. And I want you to see, based on what they say, where do you think they would fall under? Would it be a theistic worldview, a pantheism worldview, or an atheist worldview? Okay, so here's our first little clip. Which one does it fall under?
Vader was seduced by the dark side of the Force. The Force? The Force is what gives the Jedi its power. It's an energy field created by all the living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
So what would that be? It'd be pantheism, right? It's a part of everything. Everything's a part of it. That would be a pantheistic worldview thought, okay? All right, what about this one? What do you think about this one?
Remember, a Jedi can feel the Force flowing through you.
You need to control your actions?
Partially, but it also obeys your commands.
Faulty religions and ancient weapons that are mastered with plastic, you say.
You don't believe in the Force, do you?
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. Seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything that make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. There's no mystical energy field that controls my destiny. It's all a lot of simple tricks and nonsense.
I suggest you try it again, Luke. This time, let go of your conscious self and act on instinct.
With the blast shield down, I can't even see. How am I supposed to fight?
Your eyes can deceive you. Don't trust them.
All right, Joel, that's good. All right, so Han Solo, what was his worldview? Atheism, right? It's like, no, there's no outside force that's controlling me. Like, well, give me a blaster, something I can hold and touch and take care of, right? Very much everything happens within the natural world. There is nothing outside extra, okay? So I show that not because I hate Star Wars. I love Star Wars, but to show you like, hey, we have worldviews around us being portrayed all the time in everything. There are worldview messages coming our direction, okay? And so there in Star Wars, that's two different ones from the same movie, two different worldviews that were coming through. Guardians of the Galaxy would have definitely a pantheistic view, watching that one as well. Yeah, and so once you kind of understand worldviews and stuff, you can start picking up on them in like movies and TV shows. You're like, oh yeah, I can see where they're coming from, right? So as I said earlier, I think theism is a reasonable, logical, rational conclusion that you can come to when you look at these things concerning a worldview. Now, what do I mean by reasonable, rational, logical? Okay? Let me ask you this. Like having a reasonable belief, to believe something is true, is it reasonable if you believe in something that can't 100% absolutely be certainty proven? Is it reasonable to believe something is true without 100% absolute certainty?
Yes.
You say yes. Why?
Because, let's say you got a wheel, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Spin it, and like I say, 10% of it is like blue, and the rest is green. You got 9% that's green.
Mm-hmm.
It's still reasonable. It's still a good possibility that you're going to get green.
Okay.
You don't have to be dead on. You don't have to like know all of it to know that it's a better chance of being green. That makes sense. It's a good reason, you know what I'm saying?
Okay, so if you heard what Noah just said, he said it's reasonable if like you have a high percentage of something versus it not being true, it's reasonable to believe it, right? And I would tend to agree with Noah because I think we live by this practice in our life all the time. We hold things to be true and don't even question or doubt them all the time, even though you can't 100% absolutely prove something with certainty, right? I think all of you 100% would agree and don't even question the idea that George Washington was the first president of the United States. Like you do not wrestle with that every day of like, is that true? Is that not? No, for you, it's solid. You don't even question it, right? But can you 100% absolutely prove it to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that he even lived? You really can't. You can't from items from history. You cannot prove to me 100% beyond certainty that that happened. Now, is it reasonable? Sure, it's reasonable. And there's lots of reasons and evidence and support of why it is reasonable, but it's not 100% absolute certain, right? Because nothing from history, because it's happened in the past, we can do that. There is no scientific experiment that we can do today to replicate exactly what was in that time and place back in history. You just can't do it, right? The same way, I can't absolutely 100% certainly prove to you that there is not a unicorn living in the Amazon jungle right now. I can't. Like, I think it's reasonable not to believe that. It's not very logical to believe that, but can I absolutely prove it to you that there's not one unicorn living in the middle of the Amazon jungle hiding right now? No, I can't. But is it reasonable to believe that there is? I don't think it's very reasonable to believe that, right? So as long as we understand that, I think we can have a pretty good indication or clear discussion over these next couple of weeks of where we're going. And here's another example, okay? To kind of maybe solidify this for you a little bit more. Let's pretend you're on a jury of a murder case, okay? Miss Smith got murdered, right? So you're on this jury and they say, we have this body, Miss Smith, we are absolutely certain she was murdered. Who do you convict?
The killer.
Who's the killer? Well, right now, you don't have anyone trial. All you know is that Miss Smith has been murdered, and they're positive that she's been murdered. Okay? At this point, you don't have anyone, right? It could be anyone at this point, right? So let's just put you on here. You're a person, here's another person, here's another person, here's a person, here's a person. And if this is like 0% chance that they did it, and this is 100% chance that they did it up there at the top, which one of these people is it? You don't know, right? This person's equally as likely as unequally as likely to do it, if that makes sense, right? Are you with me there? Okay. So now, what if I say that they bring out the murder weapon, and on the murder weapon that killed Miss Smith, they found the fingerprints of Mr. Smith. Now, would you say it's now reasonable to think that Mr. Smith is guilty? Yes. Okay. So let's just say this right here is Mr. Smith, this person right here, and this is just person A, B, C, and D, all right? All right? So let's say Mr. Smith is the person that they've accused. Now, is it more reasonable that Mr. Smith is the murderer over them, over A, B, or C, right? So now let's say we've moved up a little bit closer to 100%. Are you absolutely certain it's him? Can you think of a reason how it could not be him? What do you try reading streamers, use those guns. Go ahead. It's a gun. Did I say knife? Oh. Did I say knife? Okay, a knife. Okay, so you're saying his fingerprints are on the knife because he used it to cut some fruit. Okay, awesome. Is that a plausible explanation? Okay, it's his house, so isn't it natural that he would touch it? Okay, is that a plausible, reasonable explanation of why his fingerprints are on the knife? Yeah, it's his house. It makes sense that his fingerprints are on the knife. Now, we said it's more probable now, it's closer, but we're still not like certain that it's him, right? Are you ready to go, oh yeah, it's definitely him, let's convict him for the rest of his life? Like you're ready to stake your life on that? No, what do you need more of? You need more evidence, right? The more evidence you have, the bigger the support becomes, the more certain you get, right? So right now, you can absolutely come up with an idea of why his fingerprints are on it and it's not him, right? Okay, so what if we say this? Mr. Smith's fingerprints are on the murder weapon, and their 5 neighbors witnessed the murder and said, oh yeah, it's him. I put gun residue up there because I meant to say gun, sorry. So there's gun residue on his shirt because I thought it was a gun, all right? And Mr. Smith actually confessed to the murder when the police came and arrested him. Now, based on that information, is it plausible, reasonable, logical to think that Mr. Smith's the murderer? Right? Right? So would you say, like, if we were like going up towards 100%, how high would we get now? 80, 90, 80, 90-ish? So, okay, we'll kind of go up here to this area right there, all right? Now, is it possible that Mr. Smith is not the murderer? Yeah. How is it possible? We already did the fingerprints one. How is it possible that 5 neighbors were all like, no, I saw him do it? Okay. Maybe it's a conspiracy. Maybe all 5 of them got together and go, oh, let's blame it on him. And they actually did it. Okay. Awesome. What? Okay. Maybe there's an accomplice and somebody else is involved. What about the last one? Mr. Smith confessed to the police. Okay. Maybe he knows who the murderer was and he decided to confess to cover for them. Is that plausible? Yeah, that's possible. That's very possible. Is it possible that maybe he has an identical twin brother and that's who the neighbors saw and they thought it was him? Is that possible? Maybe. Sure. All right. Is it possible the police maybe like tricked him or beat him and so he finally confessed to make him stop? Is that possible? Sure, it's possible. But think about this. When you start looking at all of the evidence, is it more likely, is it more reasonable to think that he did it or that an alternative is true? If you look at all of the evidence together, it's more reasonable, likely that he actually did the murder, right? Even though you can go through every single one of those, as we just did, and come up with reasons or explanations on why it's possibly not him. But what's the simplest answer that answers all of those? he did it, right? That one simple answer covers all of the questions, right? But the other way is you got to go through each one. Oh, all 5 neighbors got together with a conspiracy to go lie under oath and perjure themselves to get this dude in trouble. Like, is that more reasonable? Oh, and in addition, it's because, he went to the gun range earlier and shot, and that's why there's, gun residue on him. Is it more reasonable, that the police did that stuff to him to trick him to? So you have to go through and come up with a lot of different things to make that even a possibility versus the simpler answer of he did it. And that covers everything, right? And so it comes down to the idea of, is it more reasonable, plausible, logical that he did it over an alternative that there was somebody else who did it? Which one's the most reasonable? Yeah, he did it, right? Even though we're not to 100%, it's much more reasonable to think that he did versus somebody else, right? So let me do it this way to make you think of it like this. Let's take away Mr. Smith, and let's just put up here, theism. It's my intention over these next couple of weeks to show you that it is reasonable, it is logical to believe in a theistic worldview, even with all these other alternatives out there. And not only that it's reasonable and logical, I would argue it actually makes more sense to believe in this theistic worldview versus anything else out there. Okay? So that's where we're going over these next couple of weeks. Tonight was really just an introduction to get us going. Next week, we'll jump into, without ever even using the Bible as a resource, can we talk about God, the existence of God, without using the Bible? Can we look at science and theoretical arguments of philosophy to come to the conclusion yep, it is reasonable to believe in a God without ever looking at the Bible? So here's the thing. I don't know where all of you are when it comes to this whole God thing and where you are in your faith and that kind of thing. But this is a great opportunity for you to come and just listen and go, okay, I just want to hear, what you have to say. So if you ever have questions or thoughts, and as we go through this stuff, you're like, dude, I'm not sure that makes sense. Awesome. Ask me about it. We can talk more about it. But that's what this whole point is to talk more about the reason why we can believe in a theistic worldview versus the specifics that fall into it, which is what we normally do. Okay? So that's where we're going over these next couple of weeks. And again, my goal is not to give you things where after a Wednesday night, you can leave here and go oh, I have an atheistic friend and now I've got a weapon that I can go beat him up with. That is not the point, all right? That is not why I want to do this, all right, at all. I want to go back to earlier. My point is I want to give you confidence in a Christian worldview, that you don't have to be intimidated by people when they question you, that when smart people are like, I'm not so sure about that, you don't have to close your eyes and be like, oh, please don't ask me a question. I want to give you confidence to go, no, this is legit. And I don't have to be scared of someone being critical or attacking it because it is reasonable to believe this, okay? I want to give you that confidence, not to give you a weapon to go beat up somebody who doesn't believe what you believe. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, God, I thank you that you have made us rational beings with the intellect that we have to be able to look at the world and analyze things and come to conclusions. And God, I know there's lots of different theories and lots of different ideas and lots of different opinions when it comes to what is truth and what is real. And God, I pray that you would give us an open mind to be able to critically to analyze that, to look at it, talk about it, think about it, and come to conclusions based on how we reason and see, okay, is a theistic worldview, is it possible? Is it probable? Yeah, it's reasonable, it's logical. God, allow us to have that kind of openness to be able to ask the difficult questions, to think about things, and just to explore what it is that you have for us. So God, this we pray in your name. Amen.
All things are possible when we believe. All chains are breaking, when we answer.